Hello. Hi, Carla.
Hey.
Hello, hello. So today is the 7th of July, and here in Germany, where I am at, it's a little bit after 4 in the afternoon. And with us, we have Carla, like I said, and let's kick this interview off. Carla, tell us about yourself.
Cool. So my name is Carla Lotz. I am based in Cape Town, South Africa. It's currently winter here, so I am dressed as warmly as I possibly can be. Don't be fooled by the sun. It is cold outside, and my washing did get wet. But anyway, so I lived in Cape Town my whole life. I grew up here. I live about 2 kilometers away from where I was born. And I really, really love the country that I live in. It provides me with like a whole range of activities that I get to do. I love going to the beach. I love going for walks in the mountain. We've got beautiful forests. But at the same time, we have a really great restaurant scene because I love food so much. Sushi, especially, it's a weakness of mine. But yeah, getting to just be super active in the city is beautiful. Going for runs along the promenade. If you haven't been, I highly recommend you come because
Yeah,
it's right next to the ocean.
I've never
Stunning.
never been, and I really think if we were speaking in the past or in the future, you're basically promoting your country. Come to South
Yeah,
Africa.
come to South Africa, but don't come right now.
No, not now.
Highly recommend to not come to South Africa
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, no.
But it's definitely the kind of place that suits me because I get to be outdoors a lot. I get to spend a lot of time with like nature and
Everything.
also eat really good food, which is very important to me.
But do you know how to cook?
I do. So I
Sweet.
feel like my speciality is mac and cheese
Ah,
because I'm very specific with how mac and cheese needs to be like created. Some people prefer a slightly more dry mac and cheese where I'm all about the sauce. Like so a super cheesy mac and cheese sauce, that's really my go-to.
so you've
Um,
could you say you've stolen it from the Americans or no?
I would like to say that I have borrowed it and improved it, but
Ooh, I like that.
um, others might disagree. But we also have something in South Africa called braais, also known as like barbecues around the world. So a big part of our culture is to like crack open a beer, you have a braai on a Saturday afternoon, you watch the rugby with all your mates, and it's just like, oh, it's the best in summer. That is what you do on a summer Saturday: braai, beer, sport.
It's I want that. So you're in winter, we're in summer, but I don't know if you can tell, but it's quite ugly outside. But I'm in Germany, so I mean the weather is not the best, especially where I am at. But yeah, summer barbecues, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it was really hard to like um in summer without having a lot of social braais because our summer ended as COVID started.
Yeah.
So being indoors for a lot of it, I'm very, very pasty.
And that is why. And aside from food and aside from being one of the best travel agents I've seen promoting South Africa, um, what about life-wise, job-wise? What is it that you do?
So I work in project management. I am what we call a project resources manager. Basically, my job is to make sure that work that comes into our company is allocated and distributed in a way that like aligns with people's careers. It doesn't overwork them, it doesn't underwork them. So there's like a whole lot of puzzle problem solving that I get to do on a daily basis, which I love because I love working with people. But I also really like my brain is always going like 1,000 miles an hour. And I love getting to put that into what I do every day, which has been really, really amazing. My company is an e-learning agency. So we've actually been really busy during COVID because, you know, everyone wants to get online,
Yeah.
which I'm super, super thankful for that. But yeah, work isn't the main part of my life. I would say spending time with, when I can, with my family is really important. I'm married. I love my husband. He is my favorite person in the world. And so I've just been spending a lot of time with him, reading. I started painting. I'm not a good painter.
Not yet.
Not yet, but I've tried. Yeah, so when I'm not working, I'm trying to entertain myself I'm generally a busybody, but I love a good book.
That's
love
me.
reading.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. That is me. I don't know, because it's always so different, and you, it depends on you, right? How good
Yeah.
your imagination is. So I guess people, but no, because if you like reading, you become good, right? Like you have to have a good imagination, and maybe you don't start with it, but you transform, right? So
Yeah.
it can never be bad. And if you don't like reading, that's because you haven't read the first good books, right? It hasn't hooked.
Exactly. I'm all about like fantasy novels. I read The Magician in like 2 months, that entire series, because I was just, okay, it's 3 books, but still like flew through it, because it's just, nothing like a good book. Like good book, a glass of wine or like a cup of hot chocolate on the couch. I'm good.
You see, it's that's what it is. And tell me, does this mean, because you just mentioned, okay, reading, obviously it's something that you like doing before and you like doing now, and you will always like doing, because once you like reading, that's it, right? It's for
I
life.
can't stop.
Can't stop. But what about, you mentioned painting. Is this something that you started doing now because of the coronavirus? So did you, let's say, my question is, did you have to reinvent yourself? So what did you do before the pandemic and after the pandemic, and from a job-wise perspective, so at work, but also in your personal life? So is painting, did I get it right that painting is something that you started now?
Absolutely. I am not a very creative person, in that I struggle to create new things, or new things that are pleasing to the eye. But during our level 4 lockdown, they were selling like paint by numbers and a whole bunch of arts and crafts supplies. And so I was like, well, I'm kind of a little bit bored at home, need some more variety in my life. So I was like, cool, let me just buy this. Started it. I really, really enjoyed. I did buy a paint by numbers, and even then, I'm like struggling. But I started this paint by numbers for grown-ups. It's a grown-ups paint by numbers. So there's very, very small little spaces to paint, because I was like, well, what I usually do, I can't do. And what I usually do is go to the gym, visit my friends, see family. I love eating out at restaurants. I love getting out. Just before we went into our level 5 lockdown, the last thing my husband and I did was a walk in the forest, because we just love getting out and being outside. And that has been really, really tough for me, because I've had to have this huge mental shift from going, oh, you're now not allowed to leave your house. So when our government first implemented a lockdown, it was what we now call level 5 lockdown, where you were not allowed to leave your house. For 35 days, you were not allowed to leave your house. And for someone who is social, likes getting out, that hit hard. I was not ready for that.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You obviously had to reinvent yourself from a personal point of view,
Yeah.
right? You always going out, outdoor person, gym person, and now painting at home, staying at home,
Now I paint.
right? Yeah.
I'm a painter.
And I guess
Yeah.
from a work perspective, there wasn't that much change. Am I correct? Since you said that you already worked. Okay, so no.
Yeah. Not really. I had to adjust to working from home 5 days a week. But even then, we'd already been working remotely for a couple of months anyway. For me, the biggest adjustment with work was I now don't have the option to go into the office. It's not something that is available to me. And having to come to terms with that and being so thankful that my job is safe, but yet also feeling like I'm burning out because I still have to work. My work hours haven't changed. I've gotten busier, but I'm carrying this mental load of the coronavirus and how my family is affected, how the people I care about are affected. And that was a really difficult thing to balance for me. It was like, I'm so thankful that I have a job, but also this job is taking so much out of me, but I'm thankful for it, but I'm really, really tired. And that was something that I had to work through. And it took me, I think, 2 months to kind of come to a place where I'm like, I accept that work is really busy and I'm thankful for it. And at the same time, I'm allowed to feel tired and I'm allowed to sometimes be a little bit pissed off that I have to work. And that's okay. It doesn't make me a bad person.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was something I had to like really grapple with.
And like you said, it's funny that you use that word allowed, because of course you're allowed. It's your feelings, it's your life, right? It's your moments, it's your concerns, difficulties. And like you said, you keeping this, what we discussed, of reinventing yourself from a work perspective. The only difference is that yes, you couldn't go to the office if you wanted to, but that's it. And of course that there's more work, but from your personal life, no, you did have to reinvent, and you did. And that's the thing, every single person has had a lot of things coming to them, and it's either personal or professional or both. But it hasn't, I haven't met, and I haven't spoken, and I haven't read about anybody that the pandemic has completely not affected them.
I don't, there's no one in my circle that hasn't been affected. I have noticed that people who come from a more privileged background have noticed it less because they live in houses where they have access to the swimming pool or they have a back garden, and they were doing online shopping anyway, and they could afford to buy things when they were more expensive. Like our food prices went up, each item went up a couple of rands, but that adds up. And so I have noticed that
in euros or dollars.
No, it's not a lot of euros. I think it was 21 rand to the euro last week. So yeah, not a lot.
But still, if you add it up, especially if it can be a lot.
Yeah,
right? It is.
Yeah. So I definitely have noticed like people who are more privileged, especially who have more money, and stay in more affluent areas, don't appear to be as impacted, at least in like a physical sense, as what other people have. Like my husband and I are both working from home. We share the study. Kind of like, otherwise you're working on the couch.
It's also what you just said. They don't appear, right?
Yes.
Because we cannot forget that there's a lot in appearances, right? Especially now with the pandemic, we've seen that some things may appear one way, but in reality, they're completely different, or in situations, not doesn't have to be general, but specific
Yeah.
it can be different.
Yeah.
And also money does help. Of course it helps.
Mhm.
Whoever says it doesn't just doesn't know, right?
I don't
But
get it.
unfortunately, there's also the cases, it depends what country you're from, because you could be very well off and you could have the money that you can spend uh, more money doing online shopping and buying more groceries. But if the supply is not there, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If
Yeah.
if online shopping is not something that your country has
Yeah.
or is familiar with, or it's really, like there are countries in South America where online shopping for groceries, it's something that doesn't exist. It's not there yet,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So in that case, it's like, yes, I've got the money, eat the money. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really been interesting to watch how people have responded to COVID. Um, sorry, in South Africa, we call, like, well, maybe not South Africa, but I call it COVID. Like that's the name we call it.
There's, yeah,
Um,
we got COVID, COVID-19, coronavirus, Corona. We've got
oh,
like,
I've had some friends call it Kororo, which
oh, I have,
Kororo.
why is
Yeah.
that? Like that,
Sorry.
or is there a reason? Is there a reason, or I haven't heard that one?
No, I think they're just trying to make it like fun, I'm
Fun,
guessing.
yeah.
It's like, oh, we're tired of saying Corona, let's just call it Kororo.
To have a little
Anyway.
bit of, we've seen that lightness. Remember around March, April, that's when a lot of memes, a lot of jokes,
Yeah.
and then suddenly they really stopped from one day to
Oh, yeah.
another. And
It
that was,
like people taking it seriously now. Well, in South Africa, especially in the circles that I run in, people are really taking it seriously, and we've moved from what was a very hard lockdown, where we weren't able to leave the house, except you were allowed to leave the house if you needed to buy groceries, if you needed to put petrol in, or if you needed to get healthcare, or you were an essential worker. If you were out of the house for any other reason than that, you were confronted by the military. Um, like I've had people who, if you didn't go to the grocery store closest to your house, they turned you around and sent you to the store closest to your house. Like, it was that tightly controlled. And I've completely forgotten my point.
it's okay. We're just jumping from topics and everything. And
Yeah.
we're gonna, but it's
I'll,
fine because there's so much to talk about, and especially
yeah.
South Africa. I already told you this when I approached you to see if you wanted to be part of this series, if you could be part of this series. The unfortunate thing with South Africa is that unless you are in the country or from the country, or you are actively looking for information about South Africa for whatever reason, it is
Yeah.
very difficult to know what is going on, because international news outlet are not really talking about you.
Yeah.
We
No.
we did see, I saw in
Mhm.
March, yes, there were a few
Mhm.
headlines, a few articles and bits and pieces here and there, and it was exactly
Mhm.
because of what you were saying of the military. So when you guys went into lockdown and the military was, roaming around, like checking,
Yeah.
and of course the perception and at that time was, whoa, that's a little bit too much, right?
It was hectic.
But that's a matter of opinions. At least that's what I think. It really depends. Unfortunately, what is too much or too little, you
Mm.
can't really say, right? But
Yeah.
why am I saying this about South Africa is for two reasons. First of all, we had lost our train of thought because there's so much to talk about, right?
So much.
Too much. And why? It's because of this, because South Africa has not had the platform in a sense. And it is true that in the last weeks, the main reason is another unfortunate truth is because we have bigger tragedies happening right now in the pandemic. Not that South Africa is not one. I mean, the whole world in general, most of it. But we have Russia, we have India, we have Peru, we have Brazil, and we have the United States. So we have these countries that, you know, a lot of international focus are on. But actually, South Africa, unfortunately, will soon be in the headlines because they're doing worse and worse, right? So you have recently surpassed Germany in terms of total cases.
Yeah, I think yesterday or the day before, we went up a place in the global COVID rankings, and like that's not the kind of competition that I ever want our country to win.
No.
And it's really, really frightening. We've got a huge percentage of our population are immunocompromised. If you know much about South Africa and our healthcare, a lot of our population have TB, tuberculosis, or HIV and AIDS. Those are two diseases that are suppressing people's immune systems, and now to be facing something like the coronavirus on top of that, it's so frightening. And what's really got me thinking recently is I'm so privileged. Like, I stay in a house, it's myself, my husband. We've been able to get online deliveries and stay away from people. But you've got people living in informal settlements where their houses are right next to each other. They don't have access to running water. And so, you know, in April, March, there was that whole thing where you could generate your favorite song for like 20 seconds and it would show you your hand, like how to wash your hands. That's not something that's accessible to everyone in this country. And that's a flaw. That is a flaw of South Africa. But that's the reality that we're dealing with. And so when our government took such like a hard stance, I could understand it, because I was like, we're dealing with something that I don't think a lot of countries are.
Exactly.
And that's really scary.
Yeah. And Carla, would you say that this reality, this concern from the beginning is something that is going on right now? So is this a topic that the news are talking about? My question is, what is happening right now in your country? What is the most important thing, topic, news that people are talking about, people are watching, people are concerned about? Is it still this that you just told us about, the fact that you have so many that are immune compromised and can be obviously even more affected by the coronavirus, and what to do? Or is there more? Or just tell me a little bit about that.
So the two that like spring to mind are our no smoking. We have a cigarette ban currently, and the fact that our schools, casinos, restaurants, movie cinemas, they've all opened up recently. So what I've personally found is that I've struggled to understand the logic behind the decisions our government is making. Especially like we've implemented a no cigarette ban. So no grocery store is allowed to sell cigarettes. When we started our level 5 lockdown, I think we started that at the end of March, that was no cigarettes and no alcohol. From level 3, level 4, I'm not even sure. They all kind of merge. You were allowed to buy alcohol.
Alcohol, I can understand, because we can see it right now, even in some countries, like in the United States. You have already some states, like, if I'm not mistaken, Florida, that are saying no alcohol in certain places at a certain times, because it doesn't help the situation, right? Like, but doing it in March, yes, it's more cautious, I guess. But the cigarettes, that's a little bit
it's weird. Like, and I'm not a smoker, but I don't understand. I don't understand it. I think that there are some slightly sneaky, politically motivated mechanisms going on in the background that have contributed to the cigarette ban. But essentially, people who have been smokers their whole life have not been allowed to legally buy cigarettes since the 26th of March. So where are we now? The 7th of July. That is March. I don't even know. That's many months. That's 102 days.
For a smoker, because I used to be one, half a day is a long time. So imagine months. It's
yeah, it's hectic. And let's not kid ourselves. People are still buying cigarettes. Like, every smoker that I know has bought some off-brand cigarette that is filled with, I don't even know what.
Yeah, it's an addiction. You can't just, quit your addiction. That's why it's so difficult to quit smoking, right? It's hooks you.
It's absolutely ridiculous, taking away someone's right to choose, in a sense. And like the reasons behind them, I feel, have been really bad. Like, oh, smoking is social, so you're gonna take a puff from your cigarette and pass it on to someone else. No,
you do that when you're 13, 14, and you're trying to smoke when you shouldn't be smoking. But no smoking. I mean, in general, we know smoking is not good. It's not healthy. So in a way, if you have been able to quit smoking because of the ban, that's excellent.
Congrats.
That's
fantastic.
And do not, take back the habit. But it is difficult to be banned from one day to another. An addiction just stopped, and without, like you said, the reasons, that there's no logic. It hasn't been explained. Maybe there's a logic, but it hasn't been explained. So it adds to the confusion, right? It adds to the, wait a second, what's going on here?
Exactly. It kind of, it diminishes the trust. When we started with our level 5 lockdown, we're trusting the government to make the right decision for us. And the whole country had bought in. And like, for a country to buy in to not leaving their home for a month is huge. But then with each decision that they made that didn't add up, that's when you start to erode the trust. And people are buying smokes. I don't even know how they're getting them, but I know that they are. There was alcohol sales happening during level 5. Like, you can't stop people because just by policing them into a state of fear. That the no smoking ban is just super, super strange to me. I don't understand it. I don't support it, and I don't support smoking.
It is still banned.
Yeah, and we have no idea when cigarettes are going to come back on sale. People are paying 5-6 times the price they normally would for a pack of cigarettes because it's an addiction. I mean, I realize that it sounds like I'm very pro-smoking.
It does a little bit. Come to South Africa and bring cigarettes.
Please bring. But for me, what frustrates me about the no cigarette ban is that we've almost taken the population and said, no, you're too childish to make these decisions. We're going to make them for you. And that's what upsets me. And I also recognize that being an addict, like, addiction exists and we need to help people treat their addictions. I don't believe that taking something away categorically is the right thing to do. And so my frustration with the cigarette ban is just like, give people the right to choose, and they have to be the ones to choose. That doesn't make much sense to me at all. And then the other thing that's in our headlines at the moment is how our schools are opening. I know of 2 schools in the neighborhood that opened. They were open for 2 weeks and had to be closed for 7 days because they had so many positive cases. So when we first went into lockdown, our first term ended. and we went into school holidays. We're now halfway through our academic year, and I can understand why government wants teaching to commence, especially because we have so many members of our population who don't have access to smartphones, to tablets, to Wi-Fi, and can't get digital learning.
Which is another reality, what we were discussing before. It really depends on the reality of the country that you start off, right?
Yeah. So that's really big in the news. I have friends who are teachers, and they're like, they have to teach in a mask all day, because one of our laws now is you have to wear a mask if you leave your house. You're not allowed into a grocery store if you don't have a mask on. So we have teachers and kids who are in masks all day trying to maintain, the 1.5 meter distance, and it's just not working. And yet we've opened up our casinos, we've opened up our restaurants, we've opened up movie cinemas.
They're already opened.
Yeah. So our casino, we have like one big casino in Cape Town. I think that opened over the weekend or end of last week.
So
and
right
restaurants,
now, recently. Okay.
Like in like a couple of days ago. Restaurants are kind of taking a more phased approach. I won't be visiting any restaurants to sit down for the next while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you want to protect your people, that you're opening all of these things up, but at the same time, if you need your economy to run and to operate, you need money going in and out.
It's very difficult.
I'm really glad that.
And so many countries are seeing the pros and cons, choosing their pros, and then realizing that there were more cons, and it's very unfortunate. But especially thinking about what we spoke a little bit ago, that you were telling me, just as a fact, South Africa is a country with a lot of immunocompromised people, right? You said tuberculosis, you said HIV, and I can understand how the concern now, with all these things that are opening up, with your numbers already going up. Yesterday, you had almost 9,000 cases in one day. Your total cases have surpassed Germany. And Germany has been doing very well. It's thankfully one of the countries that has been doing well from the beginning. But we have a big number, not as big as some, obviously. But the fact that I personally have not seen South Africa's number, and then suddenly, quietly, you kept on increasing until bang, above.
Surprise.
Yeah, that's a lot. So concerning.
It is. It really, really is. And it's frightening. I think South Africa is getting COVID a little bit later because we're moving into our flu and like cold season now. We're going into winter. Well, we're in winter. Things are cold. This is when germs spread. So I think exactly. So if we're sitting at 9,000 cases a day in June, I don't even want to know what it's going to look like in July and August. July is typically our wettest season, and August is typically the coldest season, apparently, according to my husband. That
husband says.
That's really frightening. I don't think that the next 4 or 5 weeks, I don't think until mid-August we're going to feel safe to be outside.
Especially, I mean, it's the weather, which unfortunately at the beginning of the narrative of what's happening, what's not happening with the virus, sometime around March, February, even very recently, last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it is, one of the things that were heard from different people in different parts of the world was come the warm weather, the virus will disappear or will just be less, not as strong. It'll
Yeah.
be weaker. Unfortunately, that is not true because even months ago, when it was our winter, so Europe's winter,
Yeah.
you had tragedies happening in Ecuador, for instance, where it was summer.
Yeah.
And we are seeing more and more studies, more evidence, more examples that warm weather, it's not that it's going to help. If anything, it's just normal. And then if it
Yeah.
gets worse, it will be in winter because not necessarily because of the weather, but mostly because of the other problems that the weather gives you. So the normal,
Exactly.
usual flu, influenza that you have every year.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so it's going to be rough. I'm very aware that I think we're about to go into very dark times with the coronavirus. I think our numbers are going to get very scary. And like, that's really frightening. I'm really not looking forward to July because I can't see how it's going to be a great month.
no.
And I mean, I saw on social media and a little bit in our local news, like, are we going to go back to a more strict lockdown? Because it's clearly not working. But at the same time, we need our economy to be making money because we don't like South Africa's not, rolling in the cash on a good day. So I do not envy our government right now. I don't agree with some of the decisions they make, but I also recognize, like, if I was in their position, I would not be sleeping. I would probably have stopped eating because to navigate this situation is
It's
hectic.
difficult. It's very difficult no matter what country you're from and
Mm,
no matter what type of government you are, right? Because
yeah,
uh, we know, history knows that some governments in some countries are better than others. That's how it
yeah,
is. There's that's how it is. So, but
yeah,
now it doesn't really matter how good of a government you were
mm,
or how bad of a government you were in the past.
yeah,
Right now, you need to be a good government for your people, for your country. And unfortunately, good is very difficult. It's very, very difficult in general,
yeah,
but now
yeah,
it's even more. You mentioned a
yeah,
couple of things already about the lockdown,
mm,
and just the measures in general that the government has made, right?
mm,
I don't know, is there first of all, two questions. The first one is there anything else that you'd like to mention about the different measures that the South African government has done from the
mm,
beginning to pandemic or even now in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19?
mm,
And let me just give you the second question so you can choose how to respond. Second
sure,
question is the lockdown, right? You just made a comment a few seconds ago how the numbers are increasing and you're afraid. And obviously the lockdown has not really helped, but then how is it going to help? Are you going to get into a stricter lockdown? But then there's the economy, right?
mm,
So my question is, technically, the countries that went into lockdown, most of the countries in the world that went into lockdown, it was for two reasons. The first one is because
mm,
they weren't ready. They weren't ready
mm,
to face a pandemic. Their healthcare system was not ready to welcome
yeah,
such a big influx of patients that had nothing to do with the norm. No, they
yeah,
weren't ready,
yeah,
from the protective gear to the ICU beds to the ventilators to the nurses to the doctors, or even the understanding of what this virus is. So the
yeah,
first reason was to ensure that the cases and those that got sick were not too many too fast, that it would ensure the collapse of your
mm,
healthcare system, of the
mm,
country's healthcare system. That's one of the reasons. The second reason was to gain time, right?
yeah,
To get time to be able to pause, let's say, certain things. So behind the scenes, the government, while the people were in the lockdown, the numbers were stable or not increasing too fast, the government, the administration could ensure that there was a contact tracing process in place, ensure that testing was just, ramped up, ensure that isolation quarantine facilities were created or fixed or whatever. How has that been done? Has it worked? Just tell us a little bit about it.
Trying to figure out where to start. So yeah, in the beginning, when we went to our first lockdown, level 5 lockdown, so our lockdowns you work down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Level 1 being all borders are open, life returns to what it looked like before COVID. We're currently in level 3. I like to call it level 3B because at the beginning of level 3, restaurants, cinemas, beauty salons weren't allowed to open, but they've now been allowed to open. So initially, we all understood that we're going into such an intense lockdown to give our healthcare system a chance to prepare. We don't have the best healthcare system and in the first place, and so faced with the looming evidence that COVID is going to hit us and it's going to hit us hard, we definitely needed to buy time. And that's definitely something I think our government did. And I'm glad that they've done that because our hospitals have been prepared and they've been able to manage our COVID cases like up until now. But now, I saw an interesting statistic or fact. It took us 110 days to reach 100,000 cases. In the last 2 weeks, we have tested positive for 100,000 coronavirus cases. That's insane. That is, I don't even know, compounding on compounding cases.
And
so
that's all the countries, right? It's exponential growth, and it's an unfortunate truth. All countries started with 0 cases, with 0 deaths, and it took most countries, if not all countries, a long time, just like you mentioned, to get to a certain number. But you hit that barrier, and then it's overwhelming. It
just skyrockets. Yeah. So something that I think we're doing well is you are not allowed out of the house without a mask on. If you need to go grocery shopping and you've forgotten your mask at home, they're turning you around at the door because you are just not allowed to be anywhere without a mask.
So not even if I want to go for a walk?
Oh no, if you want to exercise outside, you want to go for a run, you have to have a mask on. Nice. It really is very strict with masks.
And is this something accepted, understood by the people?
Yeah.
Obviously it's enforced because you just mentioned what happens, but is it something that most people are doing it willingly because they understand?
Yeah. I haven't seen many people, if any, really complain about having to wear a mask. Like, it's annoying. People express their frustrations about how it feels claustrophobic, but they still wear the masks. They still respect the rules. So we kind of accepted the fact that we would have to wear masks. And now that's your new way of life. I think I have 3 different masks. They all go with different outfits. It's now a fashion statement. And that almost jump-started our local economy a little bit because we've now got people sitting at home, not much to do, creating masks. So I do think the government has done well in enforcing that, and the population has done well in accepting that. Like, we're not resisting it. We're saying, cool, we acknowledge it, we'll wear it. If you're in the grocery store, there's clear tape saying, cool, if that is 1.5 meters, you stay away. You want to go into your grocery shop, there is someone standing at the entrance making sure you sanitize your hands, and at most stores they're checking your temperature. So there's very, very thorough screening in place wherever you go. I went to the mall about a week ago and I needed to go to 4 different shops. I think I sanitized my hands 8 times at a minimum, just going in and out of those stores. So I think we're kind of admitting, like, okay, we can't avoid coronavirus. Our numbers probably aren't going to get better, but we're, you know, very, very susceptible to, like, or not susceptible, but we're very accepting of the fact we have to wear masks. You got to sanitize your hands. You got to have your temperature taken. If you don't
you're doing the measures, the bare minimum, let's say, that needs to be done in order to not just make it spread like wildfire, right? If you're able to stay home, you are staying home. Like, we spoke of how lucky you were, and you're lucky, but you also understand that luck and you take responsibility, right? You shouldn't be going out. You should be at home, because you can be at home. And so you stay home, even if you don't want to be home. And that is helpful. That's how it is. It just helps ensure that, you know, you stop the spread.
I saw, but I saw like a really interesting, it was definitely a joke, but we can all take something from it, in that, like, the coronavirus is like a group work project. And if you've, like, ever had to do a group work project, you know that if someone doesn't pull their weight, the rest of the team suffers for it. It's the same thing. If one province, if one area or one group of people are resisting the measures that the government is trying to put in place, the rest of us are going to suffer for it. And I think there is a sense of solidarity. That's something that I've noticed and felt both here in my own country, but also with people from other countries. It's like, we're all going through this together. Let's do what we can to make this work in the least painful way possible for us. And that kind of reignited my hope in the human spirit.
We're not doomed.
We're not completely doomed. I have been disappointed with the responses of some countries and some groups of people, but from a personal perspective, what I've seen in my local environment is people really pulling together and recognizing that they can help avoid this problem and are trying to do so. And that's nice.
No, that's definitely something, and it's a big step towards where we have to go and need to go and should be going, because that's really what a pandemic is. I keep on repeating the same things. It might be annoying to whoever has watched or is watching a lot of these interviews, but it's the truth. The pandemic, by definition, it's something that's happening globally, and until the virus is nowhere, then the pandemic just keeps on going. So that's why we all, everywhere and wherever we are, need to give and do and think. That's how it is. Definitely. Talking about giving and doing and thinking, you just went into a little bit more details of the measures that we're taking in the situation also there in South Africa. But just if you know, during this time where you weren't going out, where you had to wear a mask, where most of the things needed to be done in your household with whoever you live with, in your case, your husband, what was the government doing? So do you now have facilities? Do you now have contact tracing? Do you have now more tests? Are you testing more?
Well, from what I understand, I've also at one stage, and I will verify this before our next interview, it sounded like at one stage they weren't testing people who were under a certain age. So me being a 26-year-old female, I don't really qualify to get a COVID test because I'm in good health, I don't have any comorbidities, and I'm relatively young. I don't know that that is still the case, but it definitely was the case like a couple of weeks ago. So I'll verify that. Yeah, I think there's more access to testing. We've got like a lot of local media and information sources telling you where you can get tested. Yeah, and like our health insurances, they pay for your COVID testing. If you don't have health insurance, you know, it's covered. I don't really know how it's covered, but it is.
Yes, okay.
So I think tests are more accessible, but it's not like super widespread where they're coming to your door. So initially, one of the measures the government wanted to implement was to have people coming door to door and doing preliminary COVID screenings. That hasn't happened, well, not in my suburb, but I think they've implemented that in our grocery stores and going into shopping malls instead. So I think that they've prepared the best that they can with some very illogical decisions aside. You know, we did start on the back foot in that we just don't have that kind of like the kind of money you need to buy COVID tests, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think we've done a decent enough job with making COVID tests available to people. But I do need to check on that like age test
The
thing.
age, yeah. I mean, few countries, if any, are really going all out with testing and just testing everybody. I mean, you have some countries that even if they've got the money and they technically could, they even have the manpower and so on, they're not doing that because they've figured a different way to combat the virus. For instance, Japan, I'm pretty sure it's Japan, I'll also double check, but Japan has, the way they're doing it is they have contact tracers. They have an army of contact tracers, but instead of them just randomly going and checking everybody that's tested or everybody, what they do is there's a little outbreak or there's a specific outbreak. Okay. They basically just surround everything to do with that outbreak. So they test Carla and immediately test everybody that Carla could come into contact. And that's when maybe they get to see that you are connected to another outbreak. And so that's when they go to the other one. So they have a very specific way of combating. But for the next interview, I'm gonna double check so to know more. And that's why we need to look at other countries, right? There's so many different experiences, so many different results that can be helpful to the situation in your country.
Yeah, I just recently heard my province. So South Africa is broken up into different provinces, or like in America, it would be different states. So I stay in the Western Province, in which Cape Town is based. And I've heard recently that our province has actually been recognized as having a really good, what's the word? A good approach to treating COVID. So how they've approached it isn't, we don't have enough ventilators. Like in the beginning, we just didn't ever have enough. I don't know that any country had enough. So what our province has done is said, okay, we're going to put people on high levels of oxygen. It's a shorter term treatment, but they've seen a lot of really positive results coming from that. And I think just today that was on CNN. So South Africa's getting a little bit of international. But yeah, so that was really positive to hear. And everything that we aren't getting right, you know, there's some things that we are getting right.
You are getting right. And that's why other provinces. So it's not, it doesn't even have to be that you're looking at different continents and different countries. You can just look at your own country and look at a different province and know, look, it is possible. Let's see if that could work with us. Let's, you know, work towards that goal.
Yeah.
See if it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
So
that's how it is.
yeah.
Talking, changing a little bit the subject,
Mm.
going away from what the government has done and what other people have done and what the results have been. I want to know a little bit more about you. When was it that you realized that this was bad, that there was something called a pandemic or an epidemic and this was serious or more serious than you thought or what people were saying? Was there a specific moment, like your aha moment, or was it just gradual, or was it when the lockdown happened? I don't know. What's your moment?
I think so when coronavirus really picked up pace, I think February, March, my husband and I started following it. We were very curious to see what would happen. And I'd always taken the stance that it's more than just a flu. There's a reason why China was talking about it. There's a reason why all these other countries are now talking about it. So I was always very aware that it was a bigger deal than what a lot of media was making it out to be. And whilst not afraid of it per se, I was wary of it. I think my aha moment would be one of my colleagues used to work in infectious diseases. I'm not really sure in what way, but when she started to become very concerned with it because she could see how COVID was spreading compared to SARS or swine flu or those type of things. And she was the one who really made me aware of the fact that this is actually something you need to be genuinely worried about. And I remember we had a meeting at work. There were a group of us sitting around the table and we're going, okay, this is going to hit our country soon. How are we going to make sure that our company isn't impacted by it? And for me, that was the aha moment. And I remember standing on the standing at the whiteboard, making notes, and I was going, "Oh, this is actually what this means." And I left that meeting, and I was like, "Crap, this is very real." So that was my first big like, "Oh crap, this is real." And my second one was when my best friend, who works in our public healthcare system, had to do her first shift in a COVID ward. And the fear that I had for her made me realize that this was a big deal. So when it got even more personal and got that much closer to home, I went, I care about this person and I'm going to do everything I can to make her job easier. And for me, that was the second moment. And from then on, I've taken it seriously. I've got a younger sister. She's a type 1 diabetic. I saw a headline in the news, 15-year-old diabetic girl dies. My sister is a 15-year-old diabetic girl. Like each week there's like it just reaffirms the fact that this is something we need to take seriously. And it really hurts my heart to see people in other countries resisting things like wearing a mask. It is as basic as covering your nose, your mouth, your chin, just to do the bare minimum, because I can see how it's affecting the people that I care about and the people that they care about. So yeah, those were my two big, oh, holy crap, this is actually very real moments.
One, both unique in their way, both important. One gave me more goosebumps than the other. So obviously your second moment of your best friend, I don't know if you can tell, but I got a little bit goosebumps.
No.
And because it's it's really how you said it. It breaks your heart that there's still people that haven't not had their aha moment, because that's really what it's about, right? There are people that they have not had that moment, no matter when it was. When was your first aha moment? The
Yeah.
one at the meeting at work?
That was like the 12th of March.
Yeah.
And then the second one was Easter weekend.
Yeah. So you see, you're saying the 12th of March, and the 12th of March was, I think, the same day. So it's either one day after or the same day that the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic. So it already had the signs of a pandemic, and it was already a global health emergency for a long time. But that's when it was described as a pandemic. The 12th of March,
Yeah.
a few
It
days.
got that label pandemic.
The label. The 12th of March was a few days after Italy went into complete lockdown, the whole country. The country went on the 8th of March. Your second aha moment, your first aha moment, sorry, was 12th of March.
Yeah.
12th of March is the same day or the day after Spain also went into lockdown. The 12th of March is a moment that is aha and quite early in the story of South Africa's pandemic. But it is a moment that a lot of things had already happened in Europe, in China, in Asia. And it is March, it's months ago. And that was your first aha moment. Some had one before, many had after. And it's really, really, to use your description, heartbreaking that there are people that have not had that aha moment.
I still hear people complaining in the store saying, oh, this is just a cold, it's like overhyped. And I'm like, even if it is just a cold, even if we have overhyped it, let me point you to these very important figures. I don't care what you have to say. To be quite frank, I am thinking about myself, and I'm thinking about my 15-year-old sister with diabetes. And if you do something that puts her at risk, I'm going to be so angry with you. And she's great. She is doing social distancing. I don't even know the last time she left her house. And I think that's the thing. If you don't have someone close to you who's impacted by it, then you're just going to continue to live in that bubble, because what's forcing you from looking out and going, this is bigger than me? Yeah. And I mean, I could really go on a tangent here, but like, humankind needs to step further than themselves and say, this is bigger than I am. This is bigger than my understanding. But that doesn't mean that it's not serious or it's not true. And that applies to COVID. That applies to Black Lives Matter. There are so many places where if we just took 3 steps outside of ourselves and went, oh, there are actual people out there suffering from this, I think we would do a lot better in this world. But maybe that's for a different interview series.
No, but it's it's a very, very important point, because it and you put it very, very clear in a way that if people don't understand it, it's basically because they don't want to understand it. That's how it is. Because it doesn't mean that if something is not your reality, it does not make it not real. And in this situation, with this pandemic, even if it's not your reality, you've got to understand that whatever you do affects my reality. And you said you think of yourself and you think of your sister, And that's why you have to think of other people, because even those that are think of others, they do it a little bit selfishly, just like you said. I mean, when I started looking into the pandemic and being afraid, I was already afraid in January. So, and I had my parents saying, "Oh God, Laura, you exaggerate," and all these things. But I was afraid, yes, because I care in general about, it's sad just for the world to be put in this position, or even one country to be put in this position. But at the beginning, I thought of myself. I thought how it was going to affect me. I live in Europe. My parents live in South America, and South America in general, it's not a good place to be when there's health issues. The healthcare system in general in Latin America, it's quite bad. And there are so many problems that Europe doesn't have that Latin America has. Just like, Africa, South Africa has different problems than Europe. So the thought that somebody else's actions were going to affect me because they was going to affect my parents.
Yeah.
It's what you said. You think of
it's
yeah.
It's a lot. And I mean, one of my biggest fears, every time I see those COVID case numbers rise, I go, will my sister be okay? What happens if my dad, who has to go to work, is exposed to COVID and she gets ill? It would wreck me to know that I've lost a family member to COVID because of something that was out of our control. And my dad has to work. He has to go to the office and earn an income. Without him doing that, my family wouldn't have an income to survive on. And so that's why it is so important for everyone to respect the rules. I don't agree with them. You heard how I feel about the no smoking ban, but at the same time, I'm going to respect what the minimum guidelines are at the bare minimum, and wear my mask and sanitize my hands and stay indoors as much as possible. I feel like that's my duty as a human who cares about other humans.
Especially because of what we've discussed throughout this interview. You are in a position of privilege, of luck, of fortune, which means that you are able to do these things. So you should be doing them, because there are people that you mentioned earlier that you tell them social distance, you tell them wash their hands, and they don't even have water to wash their hands. They live in one room. So they might do things that cannot be prevented. So you do the things that you can prevent for them. So.
Exactly. And where I have excess, I'm going to take that excess and try and help someone else with it. Like, I haven't been spending money on petrol. So instead of adding that extra money to my savings account, I'm going, how can I make other people's lives better? And I think if we all did that, if we all just, like I said, took 3 steps outside of ourselves and went, how can we help? I think we would be in a lot of a better place. And I'm not saying that I'm doing it perfectly, and I'm not. And I could probably be way less selfish and buy, less sushi and help more. But for us to not step back and recognize that we do come from a place of privilege. I come from a place of privilege. I have a 2-bedroom house. One of those bedrooms is my study. Like, that is already a massive advantage. And like I say, it's my duty to do something with that. It's my duty to stay indoors. It's my duty to buy a mask, to frickin' sanitize my hands, and to do whatever I can to help those who need the help in whatever way that help looks like, financial or just support Anyway, there's so many ways you can help people. And what coronavirus Yeah.
There's so many.
Like you have endless opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many ways you can help. There's so many people, so many things, and it doesn't have to be monetary, financially. Like you said, it any way, every way is tangible. Even things that, pick up the phone and
Exactly.
call somebody, you know, that even
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. It's exactly. It's not hard, and being a person who cares about other people isn't hard. And we should all just do that a little bit more in life,
Yeah.
I
And
think,
you can
personally.
always change, right? If you haven't been that way
Exactly.
up to today,
Yeah.
yesterday you were different, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yesterday is yesterday. Start today, continue tomorrow.
Exactly. There is literally nothing stopping you from being a different person in an hour's time than there is right now,
Yeah,
except for you choosing to.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Carla, we have spoken a lot, maybe even too much. I'm wondering how long this is going to be and if people are going to watch it because, nowadays shorter videos. But it's just two things. First of all, we don't know that much about South Africa, just how we were discussing. And the second thing, I mean, we just have so much to talk about.
There's just so much.
That's what it is. So you've already given us hints, like here and there in our conversation. But just to summarize or put it all together, what are your hopes? What are your concerns? What is it, with the knowledge of what's been happening, what's happening currently in South Africa, but also, around the world? What is it that you're afraid of, that you're concerned about? What is it that you hope happens? What is it that you want to happen or not want to happen in the next few days, in the next few weeks?
Yeah. I'm going to start with my concerns so we can end on a happy note.
Sounds good.
So I am worried that people are going to get tired of the coronavirus, get tired of what it means to be safe in a corona environment in this time, and I'm concerned that they're going to become a lot more relaxed. Now, especially in my country, is not the time to become more relaxed, to go out, to socialize with people. And I'm really, really worried that people are tired of being indoors. And I get it, I'm tired too, but now is not the time to be tired. Now is the time to reignite that fear or energy that we had around coronavirus when it was March, and to really start to like look internally and put ourselves under a hard lockdown. And I'm worried that people aren't going to do that. People are going to stop taking it seriously. They're going to get tired of it and start behaving recklessly. But I know the people in my life. I know the people in their lives, and I do think, and this is my hope. I hope that the people that I know that I can influence and that they can influence start to be extra careful with coronavirus. I hope that in a few weeks' time, everyone in this country is not leaving their house because they've seen the numbers climb, and they know that by staying indoors, those numbers will drop. And so for my hope for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, for the next month is the same thing, is that people keep taking it seriously. They keep doing everything that they can to help others and to prevent the coronavirus spread within South Africa. And kind of like a sidebar to that hope is that I hope at the end of all of this, we all come out better, more caring people. I for myself personally, I don't want 2020 to end and for me to come out the other side and say, oh, well, I didn't really grow that much. This is one of the best opportunities that I'm going to ever have in my lifetime to show that I care about others. And I hope that with every day that passes, I'm doing that, I'm implementing that, I'm making it happen.
Very positive and inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
Very, 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 very good. And true. And yes, it is hopeful, but it's a hope that can become a reality. And we have seen bits and pieces of good stories here and there, things that have changed other people's life, right? And like you said, we can do more and we can have more.
Yeah.
And it does sound cheesy, you know, it does sound cheesy, and it is cheesy, but it's cheesy because it's good, especially for someone that likes mac and cheese like you. And like,
That's me.
you know, and I love cheese. I like cheese too, love cheese too. And cheesy is not bad. And in this case, cheesy, it's gotta be cheesy. You've gotta.
It has to be. You've got to cheese. You just get all of that cheese up in there.
Yeah, and do some good whenever you can, wherever you can, because what comes around goes around. It really is like that. And unfortunately, in the pandemic, a lot of it is not just because a lot of people say, you know, Darwinism, but it's wrong. It was wrong in March and it's wrong in July, because that's not true.
Yeah.
Darwinism means survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And that's not the case here, because the people that think are fit are the ones that are doing damages, or some of the ones that are doing damages, but the ones that are suffering are not necessarily the fit ones, are not necessarily the ones that are doing the damages, but are the ones that come into contact with them. And that's why this is not a moment to think of only yourself, because unfortunately it can even be bad for you, because you can be 26 or 36 and be immune compromised and not know. It's not that every person that has a comorbidity knows about it.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, not to sound incredibly bleak, but no one's safe.
It's the reality, right? We already spoke about hopes and inspirational moments and just everything that one dreams of and so on, and that's great, that's good, but you have to be realistic. This is not a moment that you can just close your eyes and wish it away, because if that was the case, then that'd be so easy. No, we would all have, like, you know, just wish it away. Carla, we spoke about everything, and I still have a lot to talk about. And now you were inspirational in your message. You were a little bit bleak also, but that was my fault because I pushed you towards it. But we did speak a lot about other people, right? About what you can do for others, and how what you do affects others, and what you want for others, right? And now I want to bring it back to you. So be selfish. Bring it back to you, and let's end it on this note. I want to know if you could speak to the Carla that will be here in 14 days. So your future self, and you could give her a message. What would you tell her?
I would tell her to stop stressing so much about life. Yes, coronavirus is big and it is scary, but there are things that are very much in her control that she can do to make it less scary for her and less scary for others. So the first thing I would say to me is, Carla, just stop stressing. Whatever you're stressing about right now, just stop it. It'll be fine. And the other thing is that I hope that in 14 days, you've done something that's made this world a better place. And that's a challenge that I'm going to put to myself. In 14 days, in 2 weeks' time, what have I done to make this planet better? It can be for one person, it can be for 100 people. But in 14 days, I want to have done something. And I hope that the Carla that I see in 2 weeks' time has done something. So yeah, don't stress and do something.
Perfect. Don't stress and do something. And it's better if you're doing something without stressing.
Exactly. That's like the goal.
That's the goal. And like you said, it doesn't matter, one person, 100 people, just make a change. Because if this pandemic has taught us anything, which it has taught us so many things, but one thing that is true, that is good and bad, sad and an opportunity, is the fact that you can change it. And doesn't matter, it's never too late. It's good because that means that whatever your situation, your country's situation, your city's situation is in, even if it's really bad, it's never too late. You can make a change. Just forget about yesterday. Start making the change today. Start wearing the mask. Start social distancing. Start, if you're able to, just stay home. Start doing all these things that we now know help prevent the spread.
Exactly.
And also, if you're in a country that is doing well, don't get too complacent. Don't forget that it takes a moment. It takes one person, one situation, blink of an eye for things to go wrong. And you don't want that to happen, because all your effort, everything you've done will be for nothing. So change can happen. And we've seen 14 days is when you start seeing the change. So just like you gave a message to the future Carla, don't stress and do something. Let's see how that goes. Because as you know, you and I will speak in 14 days.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. And I will
Thank
see you
you.
in 14 days.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, Carla.
Bye.